I've got a client who's on the fence. He's got a subdividable site, but he's not sure, should he commit and chop it up or should he enjoy his backyard? The resource consent is one of those stages where you get a big bang for buck return on investment. So stick around and I'll tell you how to work out what to do next, even if you're not sure if you want to subdivide. What are your options? You think it's crazy, right? If your section's subdividable, why would you not? So there's a real life example of a client I've got who's on the fence about whether they should subdivide or not. This video will help them work out, do I go this way, do I go that way? And it might help you too. So stick around and we'll talk about why they should subdivide, why they would consider not subdividing, and how they get from this piece of land to their decision. We've done a bunch of subdividable videos already, so if you haven't already, go ahead, go to the channel, click subscribe, search for subdivisions, and you'll be an expert in no time. So I got a client, he's a YouTube subscriber, so great start already. So I met him on site. One of the first things I identified is that it was more than likely subdividable. Got Prime Designs to take a look, and they've confirmed that we can fit a house out the back if the client chooses to go down that route. So now the client is stuck in between making a decision. Do they chop it up and get the value out of the backyard, or do they keep it as this epic family backyard area? And they're really conflicted about what is the right decision. So first and foremost, there isn't a right and a wrong decision. Just because you can subdivide doesn't mean you should. And just because you could get 4 or 6 units on a site doesn't mean you should either. Our clients at Y for 2 could have got double the units if they squished them all up, but instead they went for 3 freestanding units, and they wanted things like off-street parking, outdoor areas, and internal garages. All of those things will dictate how big and the style of subdivision you can do. So this section is in an area where we can't do that intensification, but they can definitely get one house in the backyard. But that means they lose all of their backyard. So what should they do? Option 1, obviously, just keep things as is and don't subdivide. But how this discussion came about is that we were looking at doing some work for them on the existing property, and I encouraged him to think about what is the long-term view, because if you think you might subdivide sometime in the future, you don't want to go and spend all this money building decks and fences and garages all in the wrong place, only to be moved and demolished later if and when you do subdivide. So the first thing I'd encourage you to do is stand back and have a think about where would you like to be in a year, but also where would you like to be in 10 years? How old will the kids be? Will you still be living in this house? Do you want to be mortgage free? Do you want to travel? So before you even worry about the property, you've kind of got to worry about, like, what's your vision? What's your style of living? What's your goal? And now work backwards from your goal. And so you could say, sometime in the future, we are going to subdivide and we'll put a house here. So we're going to kind of tidy up the backyard and we're going to do a deck here. For now, we're just going to leave that all as nice green grass and simple gardens, so that if and when we decide to make that decision, we haven't committed to building and putting lots of stuff there that has to just get torn down later. So I think should I subdivide is the wrong question. What is the right question? Let's unpack that a little bit more. If you are sitting on a subdividable and you own the land, why not proceed with the resource consent at a bare minimum? The resource consent is one of those stages where you get a big bang for buck return on investment. What I mean by that is just the piece of paper, not doing any of the work on site, might cost, let's say for argument's sake, 10K. The moment you get that approved, your overall property will be worth more because of that resource consent in place. And then when you are ready to make a decision on doing the subdividable, you've kind of got 6 or 9 months up your sleeve. You've really got nothing to lose. By getting the consent approval, you've increased the value of your property, you've given yourself more options in the future, and you still haven't committed to actually doing anything. So what's a builder like me interested in when I come to look at a site like yours? When I rock up, I'm looking at a number of things. What's access like from the street? Where will all the tradie vans and utes park? What are some of the hazards? What is the lay of the land like? By that I mean, like, is it sloping? Is there power lines? Is there trees? We'll also talk about you. What size house do you want? What's your budget? Yeah, I suppose one of the biggest things as well is like, where are you in the process? Are you total brand new, just thinking about it? Have you engaged a designer, planner, surveyor? Have you got consents in place? All of those things. For me personally, I'll look at things like how far away is the site from the office, because we're going to do a number of trips over a number of weeks and months to your house, and we want to make sure that we're not spending ridiculous amounts of downtime on the road. If this is where you are, and this is subdividing and this is not subdividing, think about what's holding you back from not subdividing and write a list of all those things, and think about what's enticing you to subdivide and write a list of all those things. And then look at that list versus that list, and I think that when you reframe the question that way, it becomes quite clear which way you've already made your mind up to go. I think we should introduce the beeline to the video right now. This is probably the perfect time to talk about the building process and subdividing. As the builder, what I need in place to build on your subdividable section. So while you're going ahead and clicking subscribe, let's do a quick recap. Before the building process begins, we need resource consent. That's different from building consent.
And in this video here, we talk about subdivision services and how much it costs, when it needs to be done, who does it.
Now that you've got all that info, let's talk about me getting to work building your home. How does communication work between the builder and the client at resource consent stage work? Generally, once we've had the site meeting, it's just kind of like emails and phone calls. So your planner and your designer are doing the heavy work in terms of getting resource consent, but inevitably they'll have a question, so just fire it our way. Flick us an email, give us a phone call. Yeah, just stay in contact. And even updates are really useful, like, hey, just letting you know we have done blah, 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 because I might meet someone a year ago. You know, we check in every couple of months just to know that the project's on track. I think that's probably the biggest thing a builder wants reassurance of. In their mind, they're juggling workload and what's coming up. And so if you continue to update them, they can continue to manipulate their timeline to make sure they do your job. So you've got your resource consent, you've started your subdivision services, and hopefully we've already started your building consent. Rather than waiting for a task to complete and then starting the paperwork on this, try to double up so that you've always got a piece of paperwork in action while you're doing work on site, and then when the subdivision services are ready, we've already got a building consent in place. We can send the digger and the builder there straight away to start laying the foundations in your backyard. However, there are a few things we can do before building consent, such as retaining walls. If they're a resource consent condition, we'll help you with the house move and the demolition, fencing. Boom, you've got building consent. So now we get to work, and you've seen it in all our videos. Foundations, frames, roof, boom. So another question, how do we work out a start date? Well, obviously that depends largely on consents, and then that depends on existing work we've got. So we've got like jobs boards here, and what we're always trying to do is working out where your resource consent is, estimating how long that's going to take, and then we start to project future work based on that. So as much as possible, get all of your subdivision stuff lined up and out of the way so that the builder has a clear run of doing his or her work. That means having a good timeline, being adaptable, being organized, booking in things, confirming those dates. And when I say adaptable, I don't just mean like time. We're also talking about, in this climate right now, changing materials, not being afraid to change the design and style of things to continue pushing that project along. Remember, this is your end goal. It could be like to release equity or live in a new home or create a rental stream. And so don't get caught up on this little detail if it's going to prevent you from reaching this big goal. I love the quote, "Blessed are the flexible, for they will not be bent out of shape." And I think about that so much in the building and subdividing process, because you are going to get a few curveballs thrown your way. So I think the main thing is that getting good advice early on is key to you and your subdivision process succeeding. Remember, you are the developer, it's your project, and you want it to succeed. The more informed you are, the more you understand the process. And the more you understand the process, the more you can like do what you need to do so all of us can do our job and keep that moving for you and achieve that overall end goal of that sweet little house and the backyard making you rental income. That's a great way of tying it back into the question at the start, should I subdivide? That is more than enough information for you, my viewer, to decide, should you subdivide your section? Boom. Boom.